Blake Lively, girl, sit down, because this whole situation just flipped in a way nobody expected. And honestly, it's messy in that way where you don't even know whether to gasp or just sip your tea quietly. So I was literally just minding my business, uploading a video, and boom, this drops. The judge basically came in and said, yeah, no. Like, not a little no. A big, loud, courtroom echoing no. Out of 13 claims, Blake Lively had 10 gone, completely wiped, just like that. And listen, when I say gone, I don't mean weakened or shaky, I mean erased. So now Blake Lively is sitting there with just 3 claims left. And even those, we're going to get into that because it's not looking strong. This was supposed to be her big case, her big moment. And suddenly it's like the entire thing just collapsed under her. Now, let's talk about why this even happened, because this is where it gets wild. The judge didn't just randomly throw things out. He looked at the core of Blake Lively's argument and basically said, you don't even qualify to bring this case the way you're trying to. And that's because of one thing. Blake Lively never signed her contract. Yeah, let that sink in. So Blake Lively was trying to claim employee protections, right? Using federal laws, California laws, all of that. But the judge was like, you're not even technically an employee. And if you're not an employee, you can't use those laws. So just like that, all those serious claims tied to that status, gone. And this is the part where everyone's jaws dropped. Because those were the claims carrying the whole narrative. The harassment claims, gone. The retaliation under labor law, gone. The whole angle she built her case on, gone. The judge didn't even go into whether he believed her or not. He just said, legally, you don't have the standing to even bring this here. And then it gets worse for Blake Lively, because the judge also pointed out something else. All the incidents she's talking about, they didn't even happen in California. They happened in New Jersey. So Blake Lively's legal team trying to use California laws, the judge basically shut that down immediately. He was like, you can't just pick the state that benefits your case. And honestly, that's kind of brutal. So now, not only is Blake Lively not considered an employee, but she's also trying to use laws that don't even apply to where the situation happened. That combination, it completely destroyed the foundation of her case. And let's not ignore this part, because this one really hit. The contract claim, the big one. The long form agreement she was relying on, the judge said it was never even finalized. Not signed, not completed. Basically, it doesn't exist in a legal sense. So Blake Lively trying to sue over that, the judge was like, you can't sue over something that was never actually agreed to. Now imagine building your entire case around something the court doesn't even recognize as real. That's exactly what just happened here. And then, like dominoes, everything else started falling. The defamation claim, gone. False light, gone. And when those go, the civil conspiracy claim, yeah, that collapses too. Because you can't say people conspired against you if there's no valid underlying claim anymore. So what you're left with is this very stripped down version of what used to be a huge, explosive case. And meanwhile, Justin Baldoni, he's basically watching all of this unfold while most of the serious accusations against him just got wiped off the table. Like, think about the shift in energy here. Just weeks ago, Blake Lively was positioned as the one with all the power in this case. The narrative was heavy, emotional, serious. And now, the judge has removed almost everything that made the case impactful in the first place. And I know Blake Lively is probably already preparing to appeal because there's no way she's just letting this go quietly. But right now, in this moment, this is a massive win for Justin Baldoni. Not a small win, not a partial win, a huge one. Because when 10 out of 13 claims disappear, that's not just a legal loss, that's a narrative collapse. And everybody watching this, from media to fans, is now looking at this situation very, very differently. And you can already feel the shift in how people are talking about this, right? Because before, Blake Lively's side of the story was dominating everything. It was emotional, it was serious, and people were taking it at face value. But now, with the judge stepping in like this, suddenly everyone's like, wait a minute, what actually holds up here? So let's break down what Blake Lively actually has left, because this is where things get a little tricky, but also kind of telling. Out of everything she originally brought forward, she's now down to 3 claims. Just 3. And none of them are those big explosive accusations that were making headlines before. The first one is basically Blake Lively saying, I spoke up and then I got punished for it. That's retaliation. So she's claiming that after she raised concerns, she was treated badly because of that. Now, on paper, that sounds serious, right? But here's the issue. Without those original harassment claims holding weight in court, this becomes much harder to prove. Because now it's like punished for what exactly? In a legal sense? Then the second claim is tied to that. Blake Lively is saying, not only did you punish me, but you had help doing it. And that's where the PR company comes in. She's basically alleging that there was coordination, that people worked together to damage her or push back against her after she spoke up. And the third one, this is more of a contract type angle. Blake Lively is saying, you promised not to retaliate against me and you broke that promise. So it's like a breach of agreement situation. But again, remember what the judge already said about contracts in this case. The main contract she was relying on didn't even exist in a finalized signed form. So now this remaining claim is standing on much shakier ground. So when you really look at it, Blake Lively went from having this massive case filled with serious allegations to now holding on to 3 claims that all kind of depend on each other to make sense. And if one weakens, the others start to wobble too. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni, his situation just changed completely. Because those heavy accusations, the ones that could have done real damage to his reputation, are no longer part of this case in a meaningful legal way. He's still technically involved because of those remaining claims, but it's not the same level of pressure at all. And you already know his team is probably feeling like they just dodged something huge. Because imagine being tied to all those allegations, watching the media run with it, and then suddenly the court comes in and wipes most of it away. That's not just relief. That's a full reset of how this case looks. And let's talk about the media for a second, because this is where things get even more interesting. A lot of coverage before this was heavily leaning in Blake Lively's favor, especially with those earlier reports and that big expose angle. But now, those same outlets are going to have to respond to this ruling. Because when a judge dismisses this much of a case, it raises questions, not just about the legal side, but about how the story was presented to the public in the first place. And people are noticing that. You've got viewers, readers, everyone starting to look back and rethink what they believed at the start. And that kind of shift, it spreads fast. And I can't help but think about what's happening behind the scenes right now. Blake Lively's legal team is probably scrambling, trying to figure out the next move, how to frame this, how to respond publicly, because this isn't something you can just brush off. Losing 10 out of 13 claims in one ruling, that hits hard. At the same time, Justin Baldoni's side is probably feeling validated. Like we said, this didn't hold up, and now the court is backing that up. That's a powerful position to be in, especially after weeks of public scrutiny. And the timing of all this, that's what makes it even more dramatic. Because this didn't happen slowly over months. This was sudden. One decision, and the entire landscape of the case changed overnight. So now everyone's watching. What does Blake Lively do next? Does she appeal immediately? Does she try to rebuild her case around those 3 remaining claims? Or does this turn into a long, dragged out situation where both sides just keep going back and forth? Because let's be real, this kind of case doesn't just disappear quietly. not with the names involved, not with the attention it's getting. And if Blake Lively does appeal, which honestly feels very likely, this whole thing could stretch out even longer. But right now, in this exact moment, the balance has shifted, and not slightly, completely. And that's the part nobody can ignore anymore. The balance didn't just shift a little, it flipped completely. Because when a case starts losing its core pieces like this, it stops being what it originally was. And that's exactly what's happening to Blake Lively right now. You can feel it in the way people are reacting. Before, it was all sympathy, all support, all we need to hear her out. But now there's hesitation, there's doubt. People are starting to ask questions they weren't asking before. And once that starts, it's very hard to control the narrative again. Because think about it, those 10 claims weren't small details. They were the backbone of everything Blake Lively was saying. They gave weight to her story, they made people take it seriously, and now that they're gone, what's left feels lighter, less convincing. Even if those 3 remaining claims are still technically there, they don't hit the same way. And let's not forget how strong the judge's reasoning was. This wasn't some vague dismissal. He was very clear. No signed contract, no employee status. No employee status, no federal protection, wrong state laws being used. Incidents happening in New Jersey, not California. It was like every major pillar Blake Lively's case was standing on just got pulled out one by one. And when a judge lays it out that cleanly, it's hard to come back from that. Appeals can happen, sure, but they don't magically fix everything. You have to prove that the judge made a mistake. And right now, from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like this was a careless decision. It looks very deliberate. So if Blake Lively does move forward with an appeal, it's going to be an uphill battle, a real one, not just legal, but public too. Because while all of this is happening in court, the public is forming opinions in real time. And Justin Baldoni, he's in a completely different position now. Before, he was on the defensive, constantly tied to serious allegations, constantly under pressure. But now, most of that weight has been lifted. And even though he's still technically part of the case, it's not the same fight anymore. You can almost imagine the conversations happening around him right now. The relief, the validation, the feeling of, okay, the worst of this might actually be behind us. Because let's be honest, those original claims could have followed him for years, even beyond the courtroom. And now, a huge portion of that just got cleared. And then there's the ripple effect. Because this isn't just about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni anymore. This touches everyone who was connected to the story. The PR teams, the production, the people who spoke out, the outlets that reported on it. Everyone is now part of this shifting narrative. Even the audience, the people watching all this unfold are adjusting. And once public perception starts changing, it doesn't go back easily. That initial image people had, it's already cracking. But here's the thing that makes this even more intense. This isn't over. Not even close. Because those 3 claims are still alive, and Blake Lively is not someone who's just going to walk away quietly. She's built a career on being strong, controlled, strategic. So whatever move comes next, it's going to be calculated. Maybe she doubles down. Maybe she reframes everything around those remaining claims. Maybe her team comes out with a strong public response to try and regain control of the narrative. Or maybe she goes straight into appeal mode and drags this into another phase entirely. But no matter what she does, she's now operating from a very different position than she was before. She's no longer the one holding all the cards. She's reacting, adjusting, trying to recover. And that shift, that's what everyone is watching. Because at the end of the day, this situation started as something huge, something explosive, something that felt like it could change everything for both sides. And now, after one major ruling, it's become something else entirely. Smaller, more fragile, more uncertain. And whether people want to admit it or not, this moment right here feels like a turning point. not the end, but definitely a line in the sand. Before this ruling and after it are two completely different stories. So now we wait for Blake Lively's next move, for how Justin Baldoni's team builds on this momentum, for how the media reshapes the narrative, and for what happens when those remaining claims finally get tested in court. Because if this has shown anything, it's that things can change very fast. And in this kind of situation, one decision can rewrite everything.